Tēnā katoa tātou I roto I tēnei pō. Kia ora everybody, Che Wilson here from Te Pai Pai Waho, connecting to you tonight on a number of platforms. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou. Tonight's kaupapa is about acknowledging taonga and what to say when you're acknowledging a taonga. Do you acknowledge the person, do you acknowledge the taonga? And where does whakaaro Māori come into this around the acknowledgement? So that's the kaupapa for tonight. Hoi anō, kia timata tātou. Tēnei te ara kairunga, te aro tēnei tupua, te aro tēnei ariki, te aro rangi rao ka papa e tako tēnei. Tēnei te pō, tūmai te pō. Turuturo hiti waka maua kia tīna, hui e, tāiki e. So kia ora katoa tātou. As I said, Che Wilson here from Te Pai Pai Waho, and connecting to you tonight through a range of platforms. And what I want to talk about is the process to acknowledge a taonga. And before I do that, and as people are connecting in, it's been an unusual couple of days. I don't know what it is, but just been getting really tired, and it's been probably because it's so bloody muggy. And beautiful though. I was having a swim at 7 a.m. yesterday morning because it was so hot. Hoi anō. Just want to acknowledge it. Was really happy with my garden this afternoon. Built a little trellis because my hui is just overgrowing the fence. So I thought, well, I'll train it the other way and then come back over and hopefully drape. Because I saw something like that online a few years ago with a Hawaiian who grows hui in California. And then they use them in the big hula competitions. Anyway, you'll notice I've got a different, it's not a different background, but I've changed my office around. And so it's still the same background. You can see Silla's hoi there. But just change the office around. Let's get into it. So acknowledging the taonga. What to say, how do you infuse whakaaro Māori into it? And I'm going to look at 3 different kaupapa. Moko ahure or moko papa, graduations, and koha. And I'll start with moko ahure. Our term is moko ahure, and a moko ahure is we are imprinting culture into the group of people that are getting their moko kauai or their mataora. And was at a moko ahure on the weekend too, actually. One at home at Maungarongo and then also at home at Aitehi, at Te Puke. And we had 2 at Maungarongo, 1 at Te Puke. And I was asked, how do you acknowledge, what do you say? And so I said to my nephew, and he did a good job too. Don't talk to the person who's got the moko, talk to the taonga and what the taonga will do for the people or for the whānau. And in that, you're acknowledging the person. Because you often get people just talk directly to the person. But as I've been taught, you don't talk to the person, talk to the gift and what it's going to bring for the wider group. And in this case, the moko ahurea, and we started having moko ahurea at home 2 years ago, which is quite late in the piece compared to others. There were moko kauai being done and mataora being done at home, but at least in the mountain, if it was done, it was either done at people's homes, and if it was at a marae, it was very discreet. Whereas now they're quite public events. And we did that because we wanted to not only revive, but say enough is enough, because moko was one of the key components of colonization, which tried to wipe us and our lookout. And so as I was talking to the nephew, I said, talk to that kaupapa and what it brings to the whānau, to the marae, to the hapu, to the iwi. And so you talk to the taonga, and in doing that, you still acknowledge the people, but your focus is on the taonga and what it brings to us. In addition, you then acknowledge the tohunga. And in acknowledging the tohunga tāmoko, um, it's both a thank you, but also an acknowledgement of where we need to go to grow ourselves as a people. The next one, which is a really common one, is graduations. And I've got some examples of what you could say and what you often hear. And so, what you often hear at a graduation is tēnā koe taku mokopuna. Yes, you did, and I said that you did a good job. So well done. When it comes to graduations, what you'll often hear people say is tēnā koe taku tamaiti, tēnā koe taku mokopuna. And I'm not saying that that's wrong, but as I was taught, you should be acknowledging the taonga and what your expectation is of the taonga, and how that taonga will then help the family, help the person, the family, and the hapua niwi. And so I often hear it at graduations, tēnā koe taku mokopuna, tēnei honore mātauranga, or whatever else you'll hear. Whereas what I've been taught, you would say things like this: nau mai e te taonga, whakaputa mai rā, ki te ao hei painga mo te katoa, o hei painga mo te iwi. And if I look at those words, nau mai e te taonga, you're acknowledging the graduation, you're acknowledging the gifts that come from education, whakaputa mai rā, and let the person graduate, hei painga mo te katoa. So that in graduating, there's a benefit for everybody. And that's a very Māori way of looking at it, and that you bring it to focus in on the betterment of all rather than just the individual or the person who's proud as punch at saying, yes, you got through. And don't get me wrong, having those feelings is beautiful and right. But the way you acknowledge it, as I was taught, is you acknowledge it by talking to the taonga. And as you talk to the taonga, you're invoking that taonga to help the person in their next stage of life, but also to invoke the taonga so that you then invoke responsibility in the child. And that takes me to a conversation I had with my uncle Manu Mitakingi some years ago now at Putiki, when I asked him about his father, and his father was the person who said, ko te pai tāwhiti whaia kia tata, ko te pai tata whakamaua kia tīna, old tax, rangita kuku Mitakingi. And I said, what did he mean about that, uncle? And he said, well, we were all sent away, or there was quite a few of us sent away to universities, and then we got stuck in the cities. And we were supposed to go home and help our people. Instead, we got stuck in the cities, fell in love, and all of those other things. And it took us years before we got home. And that whakatauki was about, yes, pursue, but also remember the pai tata needs you to come home too, as well as how you draw knowledge to you. And so when I link that back to a graduation, you talk to the taonga, whether that's the certificate, the portai, whatever, but it's the journey. You talk to that taonga, you talk to the journey, and how it can help bring people out to help others. The third example is koha. And common examples you'll hear is tēnā koe mo te koha, tēnā koe mo te aroha. And as I was taught, and as I heard our kuia and the aunties teaching the different women, they would always say, oh, e taurā te aroha o te iwi. So you acknowledge the the aroha that's come from the iwi rather than the person and the aroha. You do it the other way. You acknowledge the aroha, the whakaaro, and then you may include the people or not. Like you can, if it's at a tangi, e rere rā te rau aroha e rere rā ngā roi mata o te iwi e rere rā te rau aroha e. Because that rere is a reference to the koha being like how tears fall to the ground, you're placing the koha on the ground. And so what you're doing is you're talking to the aroha, the whakaaro, the intent, rather than being direct about using words like koha. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't use that, but it's about how you phrase it so that you can acknowledge from a whakaaro Māori point of view. And in doing that, you might then add extra recognition to their mountain or their river, so that you're recognizing the gifts that come from the thought of laying down a koha. So I thought I'd just share those 3 points because it becomes, I've noticed it's become quite common as I go to different graduations and as I go to different kaupapa where you're acknowledging the taonga, instead people acknowledge the people rather than the taonga. And a classic example, which is actually the fourth one, is dawn openings. We have dawn openings, the karakia is done, there's very short mihi, and then people want to then go through and have another pōhiri where the people then talk to themselves. Whereas as I was always taught, all the kōrero should be done in the morning, and you have been welcomed onto the marae through the tapu of the karakia that's been invoked. And that replaces the pōhiri, and because it's through the karakia that you're being enveloped and becoming one with everybody else that's already on the home side. And when you then finish the karakia, you then acknowledge the house, and acknowledging the house, you introduce yourself, your ope, and where you've come from. And that's how you give mana, so that because you've got to remember that a house is built on kōrero, and not just the kōrero that's in the art, but actual kōrero. And so the first thing people should be doing is it should be a good hour or two of kōrero just to help lift up the house. And as you lift it up, you're giving scaffolding to it so that it's full of love, full of connection, because you've been to that place, or you've attended that opening because you have a connection to that place. And so you talk to it, you mihi to it, and you do it that way so that everything complements all of the hard work that's been done. And sometimes people go outside because the whare is too small. Practically, I get that. But you should at least spend some time inside. Otherwise, you've just gone around, sprinkled some water. Yep, that's done. Now let's talk about us. And it can be quite sad when you see that, simply because a whare requires kōrero for it to be held up with the pillars. Ngā paupau o each kokonga are held up by pū kōrero. And at the opening, it's good to then revive all of that history and all of those connections to ensure that it's held up with massive props. Ka te ake, e mihi ana kia koutou, o te rā ki tātou katoa, me te mātou tonu. He nui ngā kaupapa kei mui a tātou. Be safe, get some clarity around the different traffic light stuff. I'm still trying to work it out myself. Hoi anō, e mihi ana kia koutou, take care, kia wakaere ake, nā kupu, ki te tāhuhu nui, orangi nui e tūnei, he taonga hoki te wareware, kei aku tau, wiki, Tues, e moe. Keo, e moe hoki, korua koutou ki te pō, tātou e taka tūnei, turuturu o hiti whakamaua kia tīna, hui e, tā ki e. Kia ora tātou.